Turns out, life is hectic in the mornings, especially on Mondays. Sunday's usually a long night. Last night was no different. Online poker games were popping. And Monday mornings, got to get the kids to school, you know, bright and early. Living the dream, as they say. Look at this. Moobot's going off over here. Excelling at Tough No Limit Hold'em games. Check it out. Check it out. Check it out. It's going off for some reason. Well, that's not good. Whatever. We'll figure that out, too. We'll figure it all out together. Monkey Mail, welcome. Nate says, sorry, I was updating. Nate, we may have special links for those books, so hit us up. We have different links for those books. Okay. Today, we're going to talk about something that gets asked pretty frequently. Whenever you're playing 10 to 25 big blinds deep, should I use a push-fold strategy only? Or should I have a flat calling range or a min-raising range? And it turns out it's actually a pretty big mistake to shove or fold only. There have been a few people out there who did great at marketing who tried to make it sound like just download this shove fold chart, use it in all scenarios, and you'll be perfectly fine. And that ended up lighting a bunch of their students' money on fire. So definitely do not use only shove or fold. I'm about to show you a few examples of this about how playing optimally lets you just play a generally better strategy and lets you play a little bit of a wider range. Turns out, if you get to play more hands, and you get to play them more profitably, right? And also, you don't just run your junky hand into your opponent's good hand and bust yourself. Is the new book worth it for people who almost always play cash games? What does worth it mean? Worth it is tough whenever you're discussing things like educational value, because if you learn one thing, is it worth the price of the book? It is to me. But if you're not going to utilize it, I guess it's not worth anything, right? What's the value of a basketball to Jonathan Little? It's $0. What is it to Michael Jordan? It's infinite dollars, right? Depends on if you're going to use it. Is the information applicable to deep stacked cash games? Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, so what I want to do today, I want to show you a shove fold application that I made a long time ago. Here it is. This is available for poker coaching members. It's just right here. Where is it? First off, get the poker coaching app on your phone. Definitely get that. This is in the dashboard over here. We're in the tool section. You just want to go over to, you can get free ebooks if you're on poker coaching. Here it is, push fold charts. You click on push fold charts, it'll bring up this. This is also part of the app. This is completely free to everyone. However, I make it very clear to the best of my ability that you should not use this shove fold chart when you have more than about 10 big blinds. And we actually have 12 big blind GTO charts and 15 big blind GTO charts in the app as well. So make sure you access those. Okay, 15 big blind strategy on the button. This is what we are, quote unquote, supposed to do. Our only options are to shove or fold. Okay? Seems reasonable. You really want to be jamming the 9-6 suited, though? You really want to be jamming the ace-2 offsuit? I mean, I guess you can't jam the ace-2 offsuit. You really want to be jamming the, all the stuff at the bottom of the range here. Let me show you what you actually should be doing roughly. This is not actually the GTO strategy. Oh, why is this so small? Let's see if I can make this any bigger. No, I can't make this bigger. I don't know how to make this any bigger. Well, whatever. This is tiny. Okay. Hopefully you can see this. All right. In this scenario, as you see, what you're quote-unquote actually supposed to do, if you're trying to use an implementable GTO strategy, which is very close to the actual GTO strategy, is you're supposed to min-raise all these hands in red, and you're supposed to shove all these hands in blue. So instead of shoving 36.7% of hands, the roughly right play is to min-raise all of your best hands and then call a jam. If you min-raise ace-8 suited, you're calling it off. You min-raise king-10 suited, you're calling it off. Min-raise 7s, you're calling it off. Copy inside of paint. All right, let's try copying inside of paint. That's equally ugly. Is this any better? Not really. Well, clearly I should have prepared ahead. That's what happens whenever you try to wing this. Okay. So as we see here, you're supposed to be jamming the hands in blue that have a decent amount of equity against, the small blind and big blinds calling ranges. They're going to do well enough. You see the low ace X's, the general big cards, etc., and then small pairs. These all jam. And then you also see all these other hands min-raising. So this actually lets you play 39% of hands instead of 36.7, right? So would you rather be able to play 36.7% of hands or 39% of hands profitably? Well, turns out you'd rather be able to play more hands profitably, right? So that alone should make you want to use this strategy. The thing is that in order to use this strategy, you're going to have to be able to play decently well post-flop. And a lot of people don't want to put forth the effort to study to get good at post-flop strategy. If you're listening to this, by the way, I know you're going to have a tough go at it. Anyway, the gist of this is that 15 big blinds deep, you want to have a min-raising strategy, including like ace-jack offsuit, min-raising strategy on the button, including stuff like ace-queen offsuit, pocket sevens, 8-7 suited, queen 5 suited, king 3 suited, king 8 offsuit. And the idea is that you're going to be folding the bottom of those hands if you get jammed on. But what this also allows you to do is it also allows the player in the big blind to call. You're going to see the flop, and then you're going to bet 1.5 big blinds on the flop, and you are going to profit immediately. And that's just going to be great. You end up not going broke nearly as often using this strategy. You're going to have bigger swings in terms of, like, on any individual hand, you're going to be more likely to win or lose 4 or 5 big blinds, but you're not going to go broke nearly as often using this strategy. And if you do use this strategy, say you min-raise the queen 9 and you flop, like, top pair, you're just putting your money in. You always push 15 big blinds below, crikey. Yeah, tricky. That's probably not optimal. Funny enough, interestingly enough, if you use the poker coaching app and you look at the 12 big blind strategy, you'll see that you should also not just open jam 12 big blinds. It's a pretty big error. Let's go over here, though. I want to show you this. So, look, it's very clear that you want to have a min-raising strategy when you're playing 15 big blinds deep, right? What's the strategy difference between these two? Not sure of the exact number. Clearly, you can tell we have this just lined up, but it is reasonable to the point that you should use this also relatively easy strategy to implement. All right, let's go over here and let's take a look at under the gun strategy. Under the gun, 15 big blinds deep, if you want to use shove or fold, you can jam 9% of hands. Okay? What do you think it's going to be if we can use a min-raise, shove, or fold strategy? Take a second, think about it. Think about what you think it's going to say. Yuck, that's ugly. Well, now, it actually says you should not shove with anything. Doesn't it depend if there's an ante or not? All these charts assume there's an ante in play. You can adjust the push fold chart if you don't want to have an ante in play, but this chart here, the static chart, assumes there's an ante in play. Okay, so now you can see that if you're using shove or fold only strategy, you get to play 9.4% of hands, but if you're using a min-raise shove or fold strategy, which interestingly enough, you do not use a shove strategy at all from under the gun, you get to play 16.7% of hands. That's because you're going to min-raise some of these hands and then fold them if you get jammed, right? So by playing a strategy that's closer to game theory optimal, you get to play substantially more hands in a profitable manner. And you want to be able to play as many hands as you can in a profitable manner. Even if it only wins just like a little bit. As Nate says here, download the app and play with the GTO tool. It's very interesting. And you'll see how far off you are from the GTO option if you use a shove or fold strategy. Yeah, it's pretty far off. So really, the shove or fold charts that you're going to get, well, I mean, they're completely free in the poker coaching app. I don't see any reason why you'd ever want to go pay for them anywhere. These charts are useful when you have about 10 big blinds or fewer. If you have more than 10 big blinds, though, you should probably be using something closer to the GTO strategy. Let me show you this app, by the way. This is what it looks like in the poker coaching app as well. Again, to get the poker coaching app, just go to pokercoaching.com, click on the tools section on the left-hand side, and it's right here, poker coaching app. Click right here. It will hopefully, oh, there it is, bring up the page, right? Interactive hand quizzes, video classes, pre-flop GTO charts, push-fold quizzes, etc. So anyway, make sure you get that. Android, it's available on Android or iTunes. Anyway, So the way you would use this chart, if you were to sit down at the table, let's say we have 10 big blinds. You go down here and select 10 big blinds. Let's put our position. Let's say we're going to be on the button. You can select the number of players at the table, what kind of ante, big blind or normal. Select the ante size, right? Adjustment, this means if you want to shove wider or tighter based on how you think your opponents are going to play. So anyway, in this scenario, on the button, let's say everyone folds to us. We have Jack 7 offsuit, and we decide to fold because that's what we're supposed to do. You just click Next. Now, we're in the cutoff. Notice how easy this would be able to do if you were at the table. Dealer shuffling their cards, you get out your chart, you look at the button strategy, you memorize it, you put your phone down. Okay, I folded. Click Next. Instead of having to like go back and select, okay, now I'm in the cutoff seat, all this, you just click Next. Let's say on this next hand you actually go all in and they all fold. Let's say you get Queen Jack offsuit. Everybody folds to you, you jam Queen Jack offsuit, they all fold. You click Steal. Now, moves you over a seat, because you're at the next hand, right? And now, you have 12 big blinds. Let's say you fold for like 10 hands in a row. You take the blinds, notice your stack goes down some. Let's say you take the blinds again. Now let's say we're in the hijack seat with ace queen offsuit. Folds around us, we jam. Now we're in the low jack seat with 10 big blinds. As you see though, this is very quick, very easy to use in game, and it's completely free, right? Some things are not all that hard to make. This was not all that hard to make. And if it's not all that hard to make, and it's not using any sort of special resources that take us more than 5 hours to make, you're getting it for free. So anyway, this is completely for free, available right here in the push-fold charts or on the poker coaching app. It's in both of them. So make sure you utilize that. Ryan says, you're loving the app so far. Good. I'm glad to hear it. Let's talk now about big blind strategy. Okay? Let's say under the gun raises. All right? Under the gun's going to raise. And it folds to us in the big blind. This assumes under the gun min raises, okay? Under the gun min raises, folds around to us in the big blind. But we're playing 15 big blinds deep again. What a lot of people do wrong is they shove or fold everything. They think, oh, under the gun raise, I better be careful. I guess I'm going to fold everything. Take a look at the roughly GTO strategy, though. You see, they're supposed to jam with some obviously good hands. Pocket sevens or better, roughly. Ace queen and ace king. Smattering of bluffs, king jack suited, ace 8 suited, ace 5 suited, pocket fives, pocket fours. Interestingly enough, slow play pocket aces. But you're also supposed to call with all sorts of junk, like queen 3 offsuit, 7-4 offsuit, 7-2 suited, 3-2 suited, right? These hands are all profitable to call because if you call, you're putting in one big blind to try to win usually your opponent's 2, your 2, the big blind, the ante and the small blind. So that's 1 to win 5.5. So you're basically saying, I think I can realize 18-ish% equity or more with these hands. And to be fair, you probably can. Right? What a lot of people think incorrectly is, I'm going to call with queen 6, I'm going to flop a 6 and not know what to do. Well, the answer is you don't fold. Right? You have to understand that whenever you start to get shallow in a tournament, you're putting your money in. Or in a cash game, you're putting your money in. And that's okay. I know some sites have these like all-in or fold games where you have to like basically know the math, right? And you have to end up making some pretty dirty calls in some scenarios where you don't love it, but you're getting the right odds. Turns out pot odds exist. And when you make a pair, when you're playing 15 big blinds deep, you're happy the majority of the time. And I guess if it comes like ace, king, 6, and you have queen, 6, maybe you can just like check fold, but that's like really nitty. You make a pair, you're pretty happy. Okay, so this is what you're supposed to do, big blind versus under the gun. You're supposed to do a whole lot of calling. A whole lot of calling. I mean, ask yourself, honestly, are you actually doing enough calling in this scenario? People wonder why they don't make deep runs in tournaments or why they find themselves struggling when they get shallow stacked. It's because they don't get in there and battle enough. You have to be willing to battle. And yeah, usually what's going to happen is someone's going to raise, you're going to call, you're going to miss the flop, you're going to check the flop, they're going to bet, you're going to fold. But that's okay because you were getting such great pot odds before the flop. Now let's discuss a different scenario. Let's discuss big blind versus a button raise. What do you think that's going to look like compared to this chart? You see this chart, right, against under the gun. What are we going to do differently against button? Ask yourself. Think about this before I give you the answer. Always try to consider what would happen in these various scenarios before you get spoon-fed the answer. So now you're going to want to shove wider, right? Exactly. You're going to jam wider, and you're going to want to play perhaps a few more hands. You can't play all that many more hands because you're already playing a ton. Interestingly enough, you're playing just a few more hands, not many. Actually, it's roughly the same. Whatever. I'm confused. Why is this different? What's happening here that's different? Whatever. We're not going to get into it too much. Anyway, in this scenario, we are playing roughly the same amount, but we are now jamming more. And we're jamming more because we're against a wider initial raising range. And because that initial raising range should be wider, that allows us to jam wider, right? Okay? Good. Let's see. Let's consider button versus cutoff now, okay? Again, all these charts are available for you if you're a poker coaching member. Actually, I think it may be free. I'm not even sure. Pokercoaching.com, go to the tool section. Let's take a look at button versus cutoff. 15 big blinds deep again. This is a situation where now you should still have a flat calling range if you feel inclined. Now, if you start looking at a range like this and you see the calling range is only a small sliver of your range, I think it's okay to kind of ignore it. This is where someone was talking about earlier, like, are you actually making that much more money by playing a substantially, like a strategy that's more difficult to implement? And I think the answer is very often yes. Now, here, though, it starts to get close. Notice that the calling range you're calling with, pocket 5s, 4s, king jack offsuit, a7 suited, a6 suited, king 10 suited, king 9 suited, queen 9 suited, 10 9 suited, and pocket aces, this range is kind of weak besides exactly the pocket aces, right? Which is going to open you up to getting jammed on. However, it's important to note that when the cutoff min raises and then you flat, people you attack can't jam too wide, especially if you protect your range by flatting aces. Because if you protect your range by flatting with aces, they're going to run into your aces sometimes. And also, like if you have 5s or 4s there, you're probably just going to call it off too. And also the initial raiser is going to have something decent as well. Okay, so this is a spot where you can call with these hands. You may say it's not very many hands though, right? Well, it turns out it's actually like 25-ish% of the range you're playing. We're flat calling 4% out of 18, so I guess a little bit less than 25% of your whole range. So this is a scenario where you should still have a flat calling range. I think a lot of people think they must be all in or fold when someone raises in front of them. But I mean, I'm showing you very clearly in this scenario that is just straight up not true, right? You're allowed to have a flat calling range. Do not think you have to be all in or fold every single time. That sounds like a broken record, I know. Let's take a look at small blind play. We haven't really discussed that yet. Small blind's interesting. Let's see. Small blind versus under the gun. Look at this mess. Small blind actually gets to flat call a ton. Pretty much any hand that flops decently well that's not quite good enough to get in likes to flat call. And then you're just jamming a straight linear range of the best hand, which is mostly pairs, and strong big cards. And ask yourself, are you really flat calling small blind here with stuff like 10-8 suited, 9-7 suited, 7-6 suited, king-8 suited? I bet most of you are not. And to be fair, I'm not even sometimes. You give me the king-8 suited, I definitely just fold. But I have learned to flatten a lot in this scenario with a lot of these hands because, again, you make a pair, you're good to go. You're not going to get jammed on by the big blind very often at all. And that's going to result in you being able to happily get your money in, right? Let's see, small blind versus later position. So look, this is small blind against under the gun. I just want to show you all why you can't just like try to memorize basic strategies and think you're good to go. Small blind versus under the gun has a very wide flat calling range, okay? Let's take a look at small blind versus button now. Okay? Small blind versus button has no flat calling range. Now you're jamming a ton. You may ask, why are we jamming a ton against the button but not against under the gun? It's because when we're jamming against the button's going to have a whole lot more junk in their range, which allows us to jam with a substantially wider range. So you see that you can't just blindly think, okay, I'm going to play the small blind by calling my medium hands and jamming my best hands. Easy game. Because that does not work, right? You want to make sure that you are playing the scenario that you are in. Let's see if there's a way for me to grab this whole thing. Give me just 1 second. We're now going to look at blind versus blind play because it becomes a bit of a mess. 15 big blinds deep. Again, a lot of people just think, oh, shove or fold 15 big blinds deep from the small blind. But no, that's not quite right. It's not quite right. All right, can you all see this? Let's see. Close enough. Again, all these charts are available at pokercoaching.com, so it's not like none of this is anything fancy. You should be able to get this. You can't get this for free. All right. Let's say they fold you in the small blind. Okay? That's this chart up here on the top left. If they fold you in the small blind, a lot of people just jam or fold everything in their playable range. And let's go back over here to the push fold app. Bring it over here. We're in the small blind. Let's say we're 15 big blinds deep. You see, 15 big blinds deep in the small blind, you can profitably jam 62% of hands. So, would you rather get to play 62% of hands profitably or 84% of hands profitably? Well, you'd obviously rather play 84% of hands profitably. What are the stack sizes for these charts? We discussed that earlier. It's in the title of this. These are 15 big blind charts. Again, we have all sorts of charts available at pokercoaching.com. As you see, we have 100 big blind, 6 max 100 big blind, 100 big blind 4 max, 75 big blind with ante, 40 big blind with ante, 25 big blind with ante, 15 big blind with ante. Okay? All this is available for you. I try to make it as easy as I possibly can. It's all there for you. Okay. So, it does depend on how profitably, but I can tell you, you make more money by playing strategies that let you play a substantially larger portion of your range. Also, funny enough, these charts assume your opponents play perfectly. You think your opponent plays perfectly? No, they're going to make mistakes. You can actually play wider than many of these charts recommend. And that's something that a lot of people also don't quite realize, that your opponents, for the most part, are going to make errors. All right. So, in this scenario, from the small blind, you should jam all your offsuit ace-x, some of the random king-x, and a lot of suited connector hands and a lot of small pairs, and you should limp everything else. And now, when you limp, small blind limp versus big blind raise, you move right down here to this chart. You see now, you limp re-raise all in with all your ace-x suited, a few low blocker bluffs like queen 4 suited, the middle pairs, 10s to 7s, king queen offsuit, and then you call aces, kings, queens, jacks, and a whole pile of marginal suited stuff like 10-5 suited, 8-4 suited, 5-3 suited, king 5 offsuit, queen 9 offsuit. And by calling with your best hands, aces, kings, queens, jacks, knowing you're like not folding those post flop, you also get to call with a substantially wider range of hands that flop reasonably well. And then you fold out your absolute junk like 10-4 offsuit, 8-3 suited, 3-2 suited, 5-4 offsuit. Small blind versus big blind all in. This is a little bit easier. You just call with your best hands. That's going to be any suited ace. 7s are better. King 8 suited are better. King 10 offsuit are better. Queen 9 suited. Jack 9 suited. 10 9 suited. Jack 10 offsuit. These are a little bit dicey, but you should probably still call them if your opponent is good. Okay. Big blind versus small blind limp. You raise a very, very polarized range. Your absolute best hands, 6s are better, ace 9 offsuit are better, ace 7 suited are better, big Broadway cards, and then a smattering of junky bluffs, like Jack 4 offsuit, 10-3 offsuit, 8-3 offsuit. And you may say, are you really raising 10-3 offsuit over a small blind limp? The answer is yes. Yes, 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 yes. You have to get out there and bluff sometimes. You cannot only raise with the nuts. Okay? Big blind versus small blind all in. This is just easy. Easy call with your best hands. Big blind versus small blind limp jam. Again, you just call off very polarized. Just call your best hands, fold your worst hands. It makes your life easy. Only 37 likes. People don't like strategy. If I've learned one thing about poker, people don't want to talk strategy. They want to talk gossip and drama. So I understand if nobody likes this video. All right, let's see what all of you are saying. What big blind per 100 sample size should you aim for before moving up? You want to have something like 8 EV big blind per 100 or all-in adjusted big blind per 100 before you move up, in my opinion, assuming you don't want to have infinite variance. You're on a downswing. Well, put in more volume. Volume cures variance. As Louis Philippe says, you have a study group. Make sure you make a point to take advantage of that. They talk about that in our Discord, so make sure you get in there. How much do pot odds apply post-flop? When your opponent's bet small, you should continue a lot, right? Yeah. When your opponent bet tiny, you should continue a ton. Can you explain the plays with the small pairs? I mean, again, you do whatever it says to do on the charts. It's nice and easy. There's a program called Munker Solver that solved it for us. That said, usually small pairs want to be all in because whenever they go all in, they make their opponents fold hands that have plenty of equity, right? Like if you have a hand like fives and your opponent folds out 8-7, that's a good success. Daily poker coaching study session. Louis Philippe, you were doing great work. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. How do you use push-fold charts if someone limps in front of us? Well, then they don't apply, Snoop. If someone limps in front of you or raises in front of you or goes all in front of you, push-fold charts no longer apply. These charts specifically apply to when everyone folds to you. Now, if people limp in front of you, very often you are going to want to ask yourself, what are they limping with? Are they limping with the idea that they're going to limp re-raise us a lot? Or limp call off a lot? Or are they limping with the idea that they're going to limp fold a lot? If they're going to limp fold a lot, then they might as well just be more dead money in the pot, which lets you jam wider. If they're going to limp call a lot, then you have to be much more cautious when it comes to jamming because you have less fold equity, right? So it's certainly not as easy as just follow a chart in those scenarios. Once people no longer have random hands, you can't really just blindly follow a chart. Now, you can make assumptions about the limper's strategy, but that's not... I mean, if you're making blind assumptions about most limper strategy, you're probably not paying attention all that much because you know if this player's limping with a bunch of garbage and folding a lot, or you know if they're limping very rarely and calling it off a ton. What if the small blind... What if the big blind squeezes a lot? Then adjust, all right? If you know that when someone raises, you call the small blind, big blind's going to jam a lot, don't call as much and jam more, right? Come on, you all can figure this out. This is not difficult stuff. You have to ask what could go wrong in this scenario. If you call the 8-7 suited and the big blind jams, you have to fold. Okay, and you know the big blind jams a lot, so stop calling the 8-7 suited and either jam it or fold it instead, right? Why in these scenarios are some of the pairs a little bit wonky looking? You're probably referring to spots where it's like, see if I can find one. Yeah, like right here. Sixes is called. Some of the others are jammed. This is just a GTO adjustment, implementable GTO adjustment. If you look at the GTO strategy here, sevens probably goes all in like 70% of the time. Sixes goes all in like 50% of the time. Five goes all in 60% of the time, and you have to figure out a way to make it implementable. In reality, though, with a lot of these hands, it doesn't really matter what you do one way or the other. But if you're trying to make a simple chart for people to follow, you have to pick one and go with it. That's what the implementable charts are. That said, hands that flop better like to call more often. Hands that have a ton of equity would rather get it in. So there's some line in this scenario in all spots where, like, say sevens is good enough to get in. Fives is essentially being used as a bluff. Sixes flops well enough to the point that it can see the flop and go with that. It is a little bit odd, I understand, but you'll see that actually happen with a lot of GTO charts where sometimes it's not quite intuitive, which is why poker's hard. That is why poker is hard. How set is this for 9-handed? Do you make adjustments for 8-handed? Everyone thinks that 9-handed, 8-handed, 10-handed is substantially different. It's not. It is not. It is not. If you're playing 9-handed, just assume you can use 10-handed charts. Just assume under the gun folded. If you're playing 6-handed, you can basically use 10-handed charts. Just assume the first 4 people folded. It's nothing different. A lot of people want to think this is some substantially different game now, but it's not. You're just in the later positions more often, and you're never in the early positions, right? Most players seem to raise a button range. Under the gun will raise when 9-8 offsuit. So if your opponents play all sorts of junk, David, that's great. That means you're just going to crush them by playing good, strong ranges. How big should we raise from the big blind when small blind limps? 3 big blinds. Why don't you raise suited hands to bluff instead? Suited hands usually flop very well. So with hands that flop very well, you don't mind seeing the flop. With hands that do not flop very well, you'd rather win the pot immediately. No one plays GTO. That is very accurate. If you know what your opponents do wrong, you should adjust. That's why, way back over here, a long time ago, we made this free push-fold app that I'm sure all of you have by now. We have this adjustment feature. You want to jam wider because your opponents fold too often? Here, easy adjustments, right? We can allow you to jam slightly wider very clearly, very cleanly, just by using the adjustment feature. Let's say they're going to call off tighter. I'm sorry, say they're going to call off wider. Maybe you want to jam a little bit tighter, right? So make sure you're adjusting to whatever your opponents do wrong. It's very, very important to do that. Don't just think you're going to show up and use some chart and crush the game. It's not how it works. You're far too tight when short stacked. Back to the drawing board. You know, Tricky Mick, most people are a little bit too tight when they're playing short stacked. Actually, I have a new course I just released for all poker coaching members, pokercoaching.com/25leaks. If you want to check it out, one of the big leaks is that people play too tight whenever they're playing shallow stacked. It's a big, big, big mistake to play too tight when you're shallow stacked, because that's just going to result in you blinding out. And if you blind out, you're basically never going to win. You're basically never going to win. You see people making a pot-sized bet. You're not sure if it's a sign of strength or weakness. Call and find out. Don't call with your garbage, but I can't tell you what people in your games are doing. I'm not playing those games either. It's very, very important to realize that your opponents in your particular games are going to play differently than players in other particular games, okay? So you want to make sure that you are adjusting to whatever your opponents do incorrectly. You have a 20-ounce coffee. Is that too large for a little coffee? No, 20 ounces is a perfect small coffee size, in my opinion. Adam Smith, hello, thank you. I'm glad you're enjoying the content. When playing free rolls or small stakes tournaments, there is no fold equity at all. Should you just not play them? Ask why you're playing, right? Are you trying to get good practice for real-world games? If you're trying to get good practice for real-world games, then no, they're not good practice. That said, if you're trying to win money or pass time or play a free roll tournament, then sure, why not, right? Do whatever you want. I would definitely recommend if you're trying to become a serious poker player that you play in games where people play seriously. I would definitely recommend putting $50 on any random poker site and play against people who are playing, $1 buy-in tournaments or $5 buy-in tournaments where they are taking it seriously. Because even if you'll have a difficult time cashing out your money from these sites perhaps down the road, view it like going to the movies, right? When you go to the movies, you buy however much a movie ticket costs nowadays. Let's say it costs $10. You and your significant other go. It costs you $20 to go. You're going to buy a popcorn and a bottle of water. So that costs another $20. It'll cost you $40 to go see the movies for 2 hours. You can play a lot of poker online, $5 buy-in games for $50. You can play 10 $5 buy-in tournaments. Each tournament takes, let's say, 3 hours. How many hours of call that entertainment is that while also playing against people who care? It's a lot, right? What's that, 30 hours of experience for $50? Think of the value. So anyway, that's what I would recommend you do if you actually care about playing seriously. That said, if you're playing against people who just call every time, just play better cards than them. Poker is so easy. So easy when your opponents play very, very poorly. It's it's the easiest game in the world. If they're just going to call you every time with nothing, just value bet, right? Kevin says, the 25 leaks is awesome. Glad you're enjoying it. Are all these push-fold charts the same? I guess you mean from company who presents them to company who presents them, or that presents them? Yeah, they are. Which is why I think it's ridiculous that some people are out there trying to charge you for them. I think it's absolutely absurd. If you paid for some charts that don't even function very well at the poker table, I'm sorry that they got you with their marketing. I'm happy to give this stuff away for free because at the end of the day, it's not hard to make. It cost me, a few $1,000 to get this thing up and running. Happy to give that away to all of you. It's not a problem for me. You played a few tournaments and didn't see it often. Not sure what you said you didn't see. Is there a difference between using the charts when there's a buttoned ante instead of a normal ante? Not really. Essentially, no. So look, whenever you're making these charts, all the solvers really care about is how much money is in the pot whenever you steal the pot. That's what they really care about. How much money is in there, what odds are we getting when we get called, etc. They don't really care where the money came from. So the fact that the button put it in or the big blind put it in, none of that matters because that money is just dead in the pot anyway. And if you do put in a big blind ante, you should not care about that ante anymore if you're in the big blind, right? Because it's not your money anymore. And realize if it's a regular ante, 15% per player or 10% per player, whatever it is, it ends up being about the same amount of money anyway. So it doesn't matter where that money came from. So don't think, I put the ante in there, I need to protect it. Or don't think, there's a big ante in there, I need to try to collect it, because there's always an ante in the pot in tournaments. Now, if there's no ante, obviously we have an adjustment feature right here. Where's the adjustment feature? Anti-type, right? Oh, you're not even looking at my screen. Ha ha. It's not going to work. Anti-type. You see big blind, normal, or no antes. Also, we have calling ranges. Calling ranges, again, you have to be very careful with these calling ranges. These assume the opponents play roughly GTO shove or fold only strategy, which of course you already learned they should not do. Unless, of course, they're playing shallow stack. Like, say they're playing 6 big blinds. Let's say hijack jams it all in. It claims we're supposed to call a 6 big blind jam from the small blind with this range here. 2s are better, ace, any ace, king 3 suited are better, king 9 off suited are better, queen 8 suited are better. These are always a little bit loose in my mind. Because I don't think people jam quite wide enough to begin with, so I usually call a little bit tighter than the calling strategies recommend. So definitely keep that in mind. You made a 3x raise, flop comes jack 2-2. Someone goes all in. You have aces. What should you do? Well, depends how much they go all in for. Usually call them. Do you still need data help for the site? I believe so. I'm not entirely sure. I know I asked about that the other day. We got about 6 people reply. Thank you to all 6 of you who replied. My team is following up at the moment. What are my thoughts on using solvers while playing online? Clearly, you should not be able to use a solver while playing online. That's absurd. How can you download these charts? These are available at pokercoaching.com in the tools section. Can't actually move it to show you. Anyway, left-hand side, there's a tool section right down here, about this high on the screen. And then here it is. Download the Poker Coaching app. It's right there in the Poker Coaching app for you. Now, so when should you really get away from using push-fold charts or any charts? Let's take a second and think about this, because a lot of people, especially I know once I initially put out my charts for free, a lot of people were like, oh, this is great. I used this at the final table the other day and crushed my opponents. But in reality, you should probably not be using this at the final table. And the reason for that is because when you are on any sort of bubble, any sort of payout implication scenario, you either should be shoving tighter or shoving looser than whatever the GTO strategy says. And that's because you have to care about the payouts. And while you could go through and make shove-fold charts for every scenario you could potentially be in, the problem with that is that essentially there's like a bazillion spots, right? Like, for example, say everyone has 10 big blinds except for one player on your left with 20, and it folds to you on the button, and you're at a final table. That's a situation where if that 20 big blind stack is on your direct left, you should shove very differently than if that 20 big blind stack is on your direct right. Which is interesting to think about, right? So just the position of the players at the table and the position of the stacks, the stack distribution, will significantly change your strategy. So you can't really use shove-fold charts, even open raising charts at the final table. I mean, I was at a final table yesterday online, and there's a spot where I think big stack raise cutoff. I was kind of shallow. I had like 15 big blinds, and there were 2 7 big blind stacks there. And I had like ace 2 offsuit on the button. That's a spot where it's just like an easy fold in this scenario. Whereas if, let's say, I was the shortest stack by a long way, let's say I only had 15 big blinds, everybody else had like 50, I would be all in every time because like I'm probably going to take 7th, 8th place, whatever it was. So you want to make sure that you are always accurately adjusting to whatever your opponents do incorrectly. And you want to be adjusting to whatever payout implications are involved, right? And I would hate to think that all of you went and downloaded my charts without knowing this, because that would be a big mistake to think that you can blindly follow any charts that are not ICM adjusted when there are ICM implications. Okay? So please, 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 please do not think that you want to be blindly following these charts. Also, in general, when there are payout implications, when you are going to be the one at risk, which is usually the case when you're shallow stacked and shoving, you should get away from the idea of min-raising pre-flop. So I know I showed you some charts earlier where, let's say, you min-raise some of your best hand, some junk. You want to adjust that strategy to be more of a shove or fold strategy. And you cannot play as wide of a range because the bottom hands on that range are only profitable because you get to min-raise them, right? They're not profitable to put all your money in. So you want to make sure that you adjust more to a shove or fold strategy when you are shallow. Like yesterday at the final table, right? I had ace king, in like middle position, 15 big blinds deep. Normally I would probably just min raise, but at a final table with payout implications with 2 7 big blind stacks sitting around, you just want to shove or fold, right? Because if you min raise and you get jammed on, yeah, you got to call it off, but you actually don't love it because you really want to avoid flips at this point. And also if you min raise and let's say big blind calls and you don't flop an ace or a king, you also don't love it. So you'd rather just rip it in or fold in those scenarios. ILFTC, you're loving the charts. Good, glad to hear it. 8. You're going to ask a specific question on 8s as a min raise, fold to a shove from under the gun, set 15, 7 big blinds. You know the charts listed 9s plus is a snap call, which makes you want to study them hard. Well, if you have 9s and 15 to 17 big blinds, you're putting your money in. Yeah, 9s are great. You'll make more folds like pocket 8s. So look, I'm not going to say you want to be making big folds with pocket 8s, but like against under the gun, playing 20 big blinds deep, yeah, you probably don't want to put all your money in. Are gut feelings real or nonsense? It depends on what you mean by a gut feeling. Remember a long time ago when someone says, oh, whenever I have the 10-7 suited and I flop a gut shot, I always get to the river because I just feel like I'm going to make a straight by the river. Is that what you mean by a gut feeling? I would hope not. Because, I mean, that's just ridiculous, right? The idea of I think my card is going to come is silly. Because you don't know what card is going to come. You can, however, get gut feelings like, I think this guy's bluffing. But you need to have a reason, right? Or at least you need to have a logical idea for why you may think that. Like if you're playing online and you're not really paying a ton of attention and you just decide this player's bluffing because you feel like it. You feel like they're bluffing. Well, that's probably silly. But like, I don't know. I'm not a big fan of I think he's bluffing on the internet because I can look into his soul and stare him down and tell. Right? Like that doesn't really work. But I mean, you see me when I'm playing. I make hero calls sometimes. And I mean, perhaps, like, look, whenever they give you 10 seconds to make your decision, it's like you're going to come up with a very clear reason for why you are doing that. But if you study the scenarios enough, that's just like pattern recognition. Exactly. That's what A.G. Kessler says right here. A lot of it really is pattern recognition. You see weird stuff, and when you see weird stuff, it just like sticks out to you, right? So is that a gut feeling? Maybe. Push full buttons are backwards. Okay. Anytime you see anything that's weird on my site that could be better, let me know. It's always very useful. You like DraftGanger streams? Good, I'm glad to hear it. Do I watch professional sports? No, I'm busy working for all of you. I wish I had time to sit back and watch professional sports, maybe in a different life. Any tips on improving hand equity as the hand progresses post-flop? Just study past tournaments and a solver and calculate the EV. Son, I'm not really even sure exactly what you're asking me here. Because I get, are you asking like, is a hand good enough to continue playing in specific manners? I'm not exactly sure. I'm not exactly sure what you're saying. I'm not exactly sure what you're asking here. I'm not so concerned about hand equity as the hand progresses. Maybe that's what it amounts to. At least I'm not thinking in that term. If you miss 6 gut shots in a row, you never fold if you have a gut shot after that because you're due to hit. Exactly right, Rick. That's a joke for those who can't tell. Bert Stevens made some deep W Coop runs last weekend. Yeah, he's been crushing it. How to determine your equity to continue based on bet sizings. Simply put, if your hand's good, don't fold. So the question is, where's that line of good to not good? Yeah, that's a tough thing to know. It's definitely a tough thing to know specifically. I'm trying to figure out if there's even a great answer to this. Watch a lot of the content by people like Matt Affleck, Faraz Jaka, and Michael Acevedo in PokerCoaching.com. They go through a ton of that type of stuff. So I would definitely recommend you check out that. When are we going to start having the pure GTO strategy and the push-fold charts instead of implementable? We're not trying to give pure push GTO push fold strategy because it's not necessary. Also, pretty sure these straight Nash ranges are basically GTO. There's only like a few spots where you would even want to split your range. Made day 2 of the W Coup. Good luck, good luck. Yeah, hope you don't get down to 15 big blinds. You don't want to get down to 15 big blinds in a tournament where average stack is 75. That said, if you find yourself there, just keep playing good poker. All right, I have to go. I hope you all have a great, great day. Hope you enjoy yourselves. Thanks for being here. So yeah, make sure you check out pokercoaching.com/25leaks. There we have 25 leaks that you need to plug. One of them is playing too tightly with a shallow stack, like we discussed today. A lot of you, I know because you've told me here, don't defend the big blind enough, probably aren't putting your money in wide enough post-flop, and that's going to result in you slowly blinding out. And I really, really, really do not want all of you to slowly blind out. I want you to have a great chance to win. If you enjoyed this, click the like button. If you enjoyed this and you're not a Poker Coaching member, go to pokercoaching.com/25leaks. If you have any of these 25 leaks, by the way, and you plug even one of them, you're going to see your win rate increase. And all I want for all of you is to see your win rate consistently increase. And an easy way to help you substantially right off the bat quickly is to make sure you don't have any of these 25 leaks in your game. So make sure you plug them. All right, have a great day. I will see all of you, well, next time I see you, Wednesday, 9 a.m. Eastern Time.